Yeah, I'm still on the Batman thing. Everything's moving so fast. When you want to look into this stuff and make videos about it, take your time. It's like a race between the tortoise and the hare. Guess who I am? The whole thing is like, the whole Batman Massacre is done in code. You know, the number of victims, the cinema was done in Cinema 9, the colors, the whole deal. After a few days in jail, James Holmes declared that he doesn't remember what happened and that he could swear he's in a movie. None of the other inmates are buying it. I don't know how they could possibly buy it. He's supposed to be in solitary confinement, but that's what the papers say. They contradict just about everything they say. They let you know that they're lying through their teeth. Either that or they just don't give a shit anymore. I used to take Renaissance plays in university, and I was mastering English. And I'd have to do these long essays on the meaning behind a lot of Shakespeare's plays, Ben Jonson, all those guys. When you do that, you become really good at knowing symbolism. And the cops arrive on the scene, and James Holmes introduces himself as the Joker. Well, he should have actually introduced himself as the Riddler. Because, most of what is said and claimed by the media has nothing to do with what the show is all about. Most people, it's already old news. It happened 3 or 4 weeks ago. Before they were already off to the next spectacle. They don't even know that they've actually missed the real show. After this real-life movie Massacre scene took place under the watchful, all-seeing eye of this Saturn hell cube, a couple of vigils were held ostensibly to honor the 12 fallen ones, where the color purple again figured prominently. The first one happened at Aurora City Hall, which just happens to be situated 3 blocks away from Century 16 at 15151 East Alameda Parkway. Now, for those of you who are not up on their numerology, 5 is the number of death, and 1 plus 5 plus 1 plus 5 plus 1 equals 13. Now, I don't usually get into numbers because you can always play with them and come up with the desired sum. But just about every aspect of this massacre seems to be part of a satanic ritual, right down to the day the perpetrators chose to commit this crime. Friday, 7/20. Friday is Venus Day, and 13 is the number of that beast. 7/20/2012 is exactly 13 years and 3 months after the Columbine Massacre. 4/20/1999.
Since Babylonian times, mankind has known that every 8 years, the faster orbit of the planet Venus overtakes the Earth 5 times. When this happens, Venus, the Earth, and the Sun are briefly in a straight line, and they form one point of a clear shape, the pentacle.
The entire City Hall seems more like a shrine to their goddess Aurora than a civic center. Of course, as always, it's often hard to tell the difference when it comes to Guberman architecture. All the occult symbolism was there, and if the mourners needed some respite from their grief, they needn't have gone far to visit Aurora riding Osiris's phallus, or if you prefer, the 7-mile snake. Most, however, were much too busy blowing helium into purple balloons and letting them float high into the air over the focal point of this very occult wonderland. This 8-pointed star, which seems to have served as ground zero for this vigil. Now, I'm not casting dispersions on these poor folks who were genuinely grieving their friends and loved ones passing. I just find it very ironic and sad that the perpetrators commit the deed, spew the propaganda and lies about it, scream for more gun control, and then set up the memorials, museums, and vigils to honor the victims who they murdered in the first place. Hell, they even get to conduct the investigation. Or maybe it's just normal in our twilight zone, where the sheep will just take it as a given that they should organize a vigil gathered around an 8-pointed star with the aurora of the dawn fountain in the middle of it. What was it Jesus was saying to the Pharisees? My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Yeah, well, not much has changed since he went into that synagogue and kicked out the money changers. Since when did it become vogue to honor the dead floating helium balloons? I was always under the impression that balloons were a symbol of merriment and festivity, and launching them high into the air was an invitation to those within distant eyesight to come join in on the fun. I'm sure that if any of these mourners were asked what the meaning of this 8-pointed star meant, they were told that it just represents a compass. That explanation is of course only the tip of the iceberg. It also represents time and space, or from the elite's perspective, the creator's matrix and their mastery over it.
Exactly. What just happened? Now there's two.
It's multiplying.
Oh my. Maybe it's the way out.
Whoa. Oh my. Oh, poor drugs. I want to know what this stuff is. Whoa.
Maybe that's what a four-dimensional object really looks like.
If that's the way out, how do we use it?
I hate it. Sounds wrong.
It's stunning. The math of it. It's a perfect quadrangular oscillation.
Move it.
I guess the scene for this vigil is appropriate because the massacre took place under a hell cube, so why shouldn't the vigil be held around a hypercube or tesseract, which is what the 8-pointed star ultimately represents. The second vigil followed the same cubic pattern as the first, in that it was held at a place called Gateway High School, which is known in Aurora as the home of the Olympians.
I'm wearing the ribbon because unfortunately AJ Boyd was one of the victims of the shooting, and it's just to support him and all of his family members and the loved ones that he knew. I'm wearing purple because it was his favorite color. He was definitely a fun guy. He's really bubbly, and I think purple expresses him a lot, so it was, the word was spread if we could all wear purple.
We were all told to wear purple because AJ was a really bubbly guy, and his favorite color was purple. I guess that sounds feasible enough if it weren't for the fact that these two vigils seem to fit so neatly into that purple hell cube back at Century 16, which appears black in the dead of night until the dark night rises, when Aurora, Eos of the Dawn, pulls her brother Helios out of the pit of hell, turning that cube purple, shedding light on all the surreal aspects of this spectacle. If this Cineplex was indeed built as a stage set for this massacre, it's very interesting that the predominant color is purple, and the name of this set is Century 16. 100 years plus 16, of course, gives you 116, which is 9/11 when you invert it. That's fairly obvious, but what isn't obvious is that the commercial use of the color purple first began in Century 16 BC. Legend has it that Melkart, god of the Phoenician city Tyre, discovered purple as he was walking along the seashore with his dog. After the dog stopped to eat some dead mollusks, Melkart noticed his dog's muzzle was stained purple. Archaeological evidence dating from 1500 BC indicates that mollusks of the Murex species were used to create dye in Phoenicia. The name Phoenicia actually means merchants of purple, just as Canaan can be translated to land of the purple dye. While I was reading that, did you notice that they referred to Melkart as the god of Tyre? Now how does a god come to be walking his dog along the seashore? Melkart is the Greek equivalent of Kronos, and the dog, well, that is probably referring to the dog star Sirius, who is none other than Anubis, who was of course Osiris's faithful companion. You remember him, right? He was on display at Denver International Airport a few years ago. I'm sure that the exhibition of Anubis ties in with this ritual somehow. It's just that it's all so hard to keep track of in our modern world of information overload and collective amnesia. They probably wouldn't have been able to pull this off in Jesus' time because people knew what all these colors and symbols meant. Astrology wasn't relegated to horoscopes like it is now, but was fairly common knowledge. People thought differently back then. Since most didn't know how to read, stories and fables were passed down by word of mouth, and just about all of them were told in astrological terms. That's why the Bible was written the way it was. 2,000 years later, most of the meaning has been submerged deep under the abyss in the realm of the occult. This is the essence of their black magic. They employ a character like Lucifer to personify the wanderings of Venus, who is never the evil entity in ancient Rome that he is now, to illuminate our material world and mystify the spiritual, separating the dark from the light, as it were. Nothing is new under the sun, and so if one looks on this ritual as some sort of ancient metaphorical fable, the reason for the color purple becomes evident. This vigil is held at Gateway, home of the Olympians. The city of Aurora is called the Gateway to the Rockies, which is where Zephyr, or Zephyrus, the god of the western wind, comes from. Now the Greek myth goes something like this. Hyacinth was a very handsome and athletic Spartan prince. Zephyrus fell in love with him and courted him, and so did Apollo. The two competed for the boy's love, but Hyacinth preferred Apollo, driving Zephyrus mad with jealousy. Later catching Apollo and Hyacinth throwing discus, Zephyrus blew a gust of wind at them, striking the boy in the head with the falling discus. When Hyacinth died, Apollo created the hyacinth or larkspur flower from his blood. According to Ovid's account, the tears of Apollo stained the newly formed flower's petals with his tears, forming the letters AI, the sign of Apollo's grief. Which brings us back to the pretext of the second vigil for Alexander J. Boyk, who they made it a point to refer to as AJ at Gateway High School, home of the Olympians. If we take the letters AJ into the literal context of this myth, or Hollywood blockbuster becoming reality, when Batman's Joker leapt out of the silver screen and supposedly shot all these people, I'm not saying no one died and the victims were all actors or anything, but it is suspicious how the media portrays the 12 dead, particularly Alexander J. Boyk, in extremely vague terms. I couldn't find one article which would indicate exactly where he was shot. Let's say that he suffered a blow to the head like Hyacinth suffered from the discus. If we take the numerical meaning of AJ, we have 1 + 10 = 11. Now the letter J is a late bloomer to the English alphabet. It is no coincidence that I and J stand side by side. They actually started out as the same character. The letter J began as a swash, a typographical embellishment for the already existing I. With the introduction of lowercase letters to the Roman numeric system, J was commonly used to denote the conclusion of a series of ones, as in XIIJ for the number 13. So there we have what could be the real reason behind the second vigil. AJ is really AI, Apollo's mark of grief on the hyacinth. If we take AI in its numerical form, we get 19, and if we invert that, we get 16. Century 16? All this could be just passed off as coincidence if it were not for the fact that this massacre took place on the 43rd anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing back in 1969. Even the number 43 adds up to 7, which was Apollo's sacred number. What did that girl say? AJ was really bubbly, and I think the color purple expresses him a lot. Nice touch with the dark sunglasses there, sweetie. Wouldn't want to betray your little purple lies for the TV cameras, would you? They always have to tell you what they're doing by dropping obvious clues for those with eyes to see and minds to read. Or perhaps she doesn't realize that she is yet another actress reciting her lines for this psyop, and they somehow slipped this particular necklace around her pretty little neck. Who knows? But it is interesting how they've got people so blinded that they can manipulate an entire town into acting their parts by doing their parts for this real-life movie, where life has come to imitate art. It doesn't seem to matter at this point whether we've taken the blue pill or the red pill. We all seem to be knee-jerking to the rhythm of their orchestra as we dance like marionettes swaying to the symphony of destruction. That's why I find this particular production so interesting. Ground Zero features a purple cube with the seal of Saturn all over it, and few people seem to notice. Even if you do notice, you have to do the unthinkable and merge the red and the blue into one purple pill in order to see the wizard working his sorcery behind the purple curtain of this thing. That is what I think the purple theme of this entire ritual is trying to convey. It's truly a masterpiece of social engineering. And for the grand finale, after the City Hall vigil on 7/22 takes place, some girl named Crystal snaps this shot, which appears to show an angel of cloud rising directly from the Cineplex. I don't know if it's just me, but that cloud seems to have a purple hue to it. The site even went so far as to tint this picture purple, and the name of the girl who snapped it just happens to be Crystal. Sure. A 7 News viewer snapped a photo that shows what she said is an angel in the clouds above the vigil site for the theater rampage victims. Crystal Fuller, or Fuller Crystal, took the photo after the vigil was finished Sunday night, but said she didn't notice the image of the angel right away. Yeah, she probably had to go home and Photoshop it first. I noticed it after I posted it, she said. Crazy cloud. One of my friends, Barbara Maces, said it's an angel, and I saw it. People are saying that it's a message from God. Wow, they see an angel in the clouds and they read divine meaning into that, but they can't see that just about every government and corporate symbol in America is satanic in nature, including the site where this photo was taken. They have the apotheosis of George Washington on the dome of the Capitoline in D.C., which, by the way, means 600 in Roman numerals. He's been deified as the Masonic Jesus, for Christ's sakes. Batman's the good guy, but he represents a vampire who dwells in a cave. He only comes out at night to snatch souls and drink blood. I mean, that's why I've been picking this blockbuster apart. It's mind-blowing how steeped in the occult this really is. I could go on for the next 2 hours speculating on why this whole ritual is bathed in purple. It might have something to do with hybrid blood, mixing blue blood with human blood. There's a somewhat similar symbol encrypted in this branding iron at the Temple of Baal in Baalbek, Syria, and the thing that's wielding it doesn't look human. You know how they just love the number 33? Maybe that's what the red pill, blue pill thing in the Matrix really means. His name is Neo, new, pure. He's the one, and he chooses the red pill, the higher degree of Freemasonry. The guy he's taking it from is called Morpheus, morphing us. A girl named Trinity introduces Neo, the one to be morphed by Morpheus, as red pill. Trinity is a loaded name to the high priest from the mystery religion, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. I mean, we obviously live in a matrix exactly the way Morpheus describes it to Neo. It's not realistic to just take the red pill because most of the population consumes wholeheartedly the blue pill. We have to navigate our way through this idiotic world by taking the blue pill sometimes, keeping our conspiracy theories to ourselves. The matrix is everywhere. They're all around us, even now in this very room. You can see them when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You have to get along with them when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world which you must wear dark sunglasses in to hide your eyes in order to blind them from the truth that you are no longer a slave, Neo.